Moving on, Sir Keir Starmer has ditched the plan to roll out ULEZ-style zones across the UK, apparently. Instead, Labour stressed that clean air zones are a Tory government policy and will look for other ways to reduce air pollution, which won't put pressure on hard-working families. This is a really fascinating twist in the old net zero trial, I suppose you could say, with each party trying to outdo each other and row back a bit on what was originally a full frontal agenda. The Labour leader seems to have heard the people's plight, and they don't want to pay £12.50 a day just to get to work, drop the kids off at school. But London Mayor Sadiq Khan has committed, big time, to pressing ahead with the expansion of the capital's ultra-low emission zones next month. Here's another weird twist. A story I never thought I would read. Extinction Rebellion founder, Roger Hallam, spoke out against Mr Khan's plan. He called it intrusive and regressive. Now, I don't normally agree with Extinction Rebellion, as you can imagine, but in this case, I think they are bang on the money. Expanding ULEZ will hit Britain's poorest the hardest, that's what he said. And what's fair about that? He also called it, and again, this is language that you very easily could hear Nigel Farage saying, couldn't you? He says that it was a, kind of metropolitan, uber-liberal, elitist view, ULEZ, which, I believe is true. I just didn't really think I would hear him saying that. Joining me now is environmentalist and friend of the show, is Tom Burke. Tom, thank you very, very much. Were you as shocked as I was to hear the founder of Extinction Rebellion saying that he doesn't really like ULEZ?
Well, Patrick, just to be exactly correct, what we heard was what the Daily Mail said he'd said. And I'm always pretty cautious when I read the Daily Mail. I don't actually know what...
to my knowledge, he hasn't sued them yet, Tom, to be fair. So let's assume he has said it, and I will stand corrected if he takes them to court.
No, but I'm just always a word of caution when you listen to the Daily Mail. But certainly it would be wrong to say that people that somehow concern for air pollution is a middle-class preoccupation. There are about 4,000 people in London who have premature death because of air pollution every year, and some of them may indeed be urban, middle class, and even left wing. But an awful lot of them are just going to be ordinary people.
Could I just ask about that figure, that figure of about 4,000 people having premature deaths? Because I was reading a report, the Committee on the Medical Effects of Pollution, which said that whilst that is technically true, that 4,000 people might have premature deaths due to air pollution in London, they reckon that death is premature by around 51 to 65 hours per person. And potentially, in extreme situations, you might have died 3 days earlier than you eventually would. So it's not quite the total catastrophe, is it? These people try.
Sorry, I think you're just playing with the numbers, Patrick. I don't think it matters very much how long you can do those things with the numbers. Anybody whose death is caused early by air pollution is right to be pretty cross about it. And if you remember what caused this story to become in fact, Roger Hallam was one of the people who campaigned for tracking air pollution in London before he was involved in Extinction Rebellion. And the reason for that was because, as the coroner declared, when that young girl, Ella, died in 2013, air pollution was the cause of her death. And that's the thing I think that really sticks with in people's minds, and quite correctly. So it really matters that you do something about air pollution. And by the way, when you were introducing this piece, you connected air pollution issues with net zero. Now, these are completely separate issues. There's no, unless you think that the only people who care about
a way I would connect them is the fact that people are going to end up paying for them. And do you think do you not think that it is going to unequivocally hit the poorest in society the hardest, having to pay £12.50 a day to take your car off your drive? You can't necessarily get a new one. I mean, that I think is what he was getting at, isn't it? Which even the leader of Extinction Rebellion is now saying, basically, look, the vast majority of people can't afford it. It's a luxury if you can.
No, he's not saying the vast majority of people can't afford it. He's saying, as you've just quoted, he's saying that the lowest income people will be put at a disadvantage. That's absolutely right. He's right about that. There'll also be, by the way, the people who suffer most from air pollution. And there's an overwhelming body of evidence that shows the people who pay the price of us not dealing with problems. So the real issue is how to make sure that people who can afford it pay. And that's exactly why there's a scrappage scheme to help those people who can't afford it. It's only 1 in 10 of the cars in Uxbridge were affected by it. So I'm not sure that the idea that somehow, other than in the mind of the editors of the Daily Mail,
well, it's interesting again. But it's interesting again. This 1 in 10 figure, right? Because it was actually heard in the High Court by 5 councillors. They said, so this is for Bexley, Bromley, Harrow and Hillingdon, along with Surrey County Council. They massively contested this 1 in 10 figure and said that they actually don't understand where that figure's come from and that it's disinformation, they said.
And calling it disinformation, I mean, I don't.
Well, they said they couldn't find any proof for it. This is the thing that it was built on this. It was built on this claim, right? That 90, because it makes it sound palatable, doesn't it? 90% of you won't be affected by it. And they said, well, where have you got that from? And they couldn't find out.
I read it in the newspapers too. So if the newspapers are presenting things that are wrong, then shame on the newspapers for doing that. What is definitely the case is it costs about the NHS in London about £600 million a year. That's government's official figures on that to deal with the consequences of air pollution. So it's not only that poor people have to pay a bit, and we should get some help with that, but actually when they're the people who most need the services of the NHS that can't provide them because we're spending money on dealing with the consequences of people who can afford to pay the ULEZ fee driving their cars around in London.
I mean, another argument would be that if people know that there is an ultra-low emission zone and they can't afford it, what they actually will do is drive around it and therefore drive for a longer period of time, causing more pollution.
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's the kind of thing people say, but, you know, most of us are too busy in our lives to take an extra line to avoid paying £12. Much more important is to think, why are we not supporting those people? And there are some people for whom this will be really difficult. Why are we not supporting them directly with the scrappage scheme? And my understanding is that's available and has been available since January this year.
Do you think we should just have a massive referendum on this?
No.
Why not? Because you might not like the result.
Well, because we might. Let's have a referendum whether we should have TV news on there. I don't think you solve complicated, difficult issues.
It affects fewer people. With respect, I think you know what? I would be the first person to say if GB News was costing people £12.50 a day and it was going to tell them to do all sorts of different life changes, I would be the first in line to say, you know what, it's the kind of thing we should have a referendum on, right? But it's not. But I tell you what, the ULEZ might. So should we have a referendum on that?
No, we shouldn't have a referendum. It's not the way to deal with issues that are difficult and complex and require lots of trade-offs. You're not going to have a referendum that decides which of the 30,000 people a year that in this country have premature deaths from air pollution should die. I don't think you choose sort these issues. I do think we should have politics which are a bit less, if you like, how can I put it? A bit less considering the evidence and a bit less focused on the headlines, on appeasing the headlines, and more on actually doing the job that people need done by the politicians.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Tom Burke there, keen environmentalist to say the least. Right, thank you very, very much.